From Estero, Florida, this is the One Extraordinary Marriage Show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. Creators of the 6 Pillars of Intimacy, I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call or text us on the Hug Hotline at 858-876-5663 or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's episode, we're talking about how often married couples have sex at different ages and how to determine the frequency that works for the season your marriage is in.
Absolutely. And as we kick off today's episode, just want to start with this quote, anonymous quote that says, "Your marriage doesn't need to match any statistic. It needs to work for the two of you." And I just want everybody to keep that in mind as we're going throughout today's episode. It needs to work for the two of you. You know, if this is your first time listening to the One Extraordinary Marriage Show, thank you. We are so honored and blessed that you would tune in today. If you are brand new, here at the top of every episode, we share a hug. And a hug is an opportunity for us to celebrate what you're doing in your marriage, the breakthroughs that you had. And this hug comes from a couple in the One Family private Facebook group that simply started, "Tony and Elisa, your podcast has been such a blessing already. And I just found it about a month ago. My husband and I have both grown and made changes in our marriage already. In fact, our date nights out have become more exciting. We've started going to concerts together, planning fun outings, and enjoying physical touch during our times out, not just in private. Before, our dates consisted of dinner and walking around a mall or store. Thank you for awakening things in our marriage."
I love it. I love it when couples take the 6 pillars of intimacy, grab onto that recreational intimacy, that physical intimacy, that non-sexual touch, and really create their own extraordinary marriage. It's truly an honor and a blessing to have each and every one of you part of the One Family. And, you know, for this couple and many of you out there who've been listening, who've been taking what we've shared through the 6 pillars of intimacy and being intentional and taking action, that's where the magic happens. And so thank you all for what you do to create extraordinary marriages for yourselves, but to also show it to the world around.
Absolutely. And, you know, as Tony said at the very top of this episode, we're talking about how often married couples have sex at different ages and how to determine frequency that works for the season of marriage you're in. And, you know, part of the reason this episode even came about is because one of the most common questions that couples ask about their sex life is, are we having enough sex?
Are we?
Are we? That's a great question.
I don't know.
Well, I guess we're going to be talking about that in today's episode as well. But, you know, sometimes people do. They'll ask us directly. Like it'll come up for me in coaching sessions. Sometimes when we are speaking at events or doing conferences, that it'll be a conversation that's off to the side.
That's usually when I hear it. I hear it when we're at speaking events or something, and we'll bring up around sexual intimacy, the intimacy lifestyle, and that's where it tends to come up. And, you know, just depending on seasons and age and all that, which we're going to get into, it's a big question.
Right, because maybe you're having sex once a week and you're wondering if other couples who are in your same age group, age range, are having it more often or less often. Maybe your frequency's changed over the years and you aren't sure whether that's normal or if it's indicative that something is wrong. Or maybe you and your spouse have really different opinions on what that should look like. And I want to say from the get-go, I know some of you are hoping that Tony and I are going to be like, here's the magic number. And we are going to talk numbers in today's episode, but those numbers are all going to have context around them. Because just like that quote at the opening of the show, your marriage doesn't need to match any statistic. It needs to work for the two of you. All right, so let's start with a little bit of research because I think that's important. Research from the General Social Survey found that sexual frequency does change with age. So adults in their 20s reported having sex around 80 times a year or once every 3 to 4 days. Okay. So that would kind of start to fall into sort of like, you know, twice a week-ish, give or take, a little less than twice a week.
Every 3 to 4 days.
Yeah,
okay.
Depending.
Yeah. Okay.
By mid-40s, that average drops to around 60 times a year, which is just a little over once a week. And by the mid-60s, the average was around 20 times a year, or fewer than twice a month.
Okay.
Okay. Research involving people in relationships also found that there was a connection between sexual frequency and well-being levels. Then that level and well-being, and that level's off around once a week. So frequency, sense of well-being, regular, not routine sex, but regular frequency really does make a impact on that. And couples having sex more than a week, and I know for all of us that do the intimacy lifestyle and we're like 2 or 3 times a week, this may actually, I don't think they interviewed, I'm just going to put it out there, I don't think they talked to the one family, because the research says that couples having sex more than once a week did not report significantly greater well-being than those having sex weekly. I'm going to say, I don't think so. I would challenge that.
I would too.
So
they're basically saying that those who are having sex more than once a week didn't report significantly greater well-being than those having sex weekly.
Correct.
I disagree.
I disagree. I've talked to too many people. I'm like, I would want to dig into that.
This is research, but yeah. I would say, I'd want to know more about that one.
And what I want to say is that, again, this is not creating a magic number for your marriage. This is what is being found based on what groups of people reported.
Correct.
Right? What they're saying. It's not a prescription for you and your spouse. And the other thing to note too is that averages hide all kinds of differences, right? So within age groups, you can have couples that are having sex, several times a week or once a month, or, it's all over the place. And I want to be very clear what an average does tell you, or it cannot tell you. An average cannot tell you how satisfied both spouses feel.
Mm-hmm.
Whether sex feels connecting or obligatory, how much rejection is in the marriage, if there are health challenges affecting intimacy, if the frequency has changed, or whether or not the couple is talking about their sex life. It's simply a number, a snapshot in time for when a couple or an individual reported what was happening in their marriage. And I just want you to sit with that for a second. It doesn't, it's a number. It's a moment when somebody said, hey, fill out this survey and report, your frequency over a certain amount of time. But it doesn't tell you hardly anything except for the frequency about their sexual intimacy pillar.
And yet it's something that people ask so often because we want to know how we measure up against other couples. And here's the interesting thing. When I heard Elisa talking about this, something we have said for the longest time that I can recall is, don't tell me you've been married 40, 50 years and have had a miserable marriage. That it's just a number at that point in time. And anybody can live for 40 years, 50 years, if they so please, and choose in misery. And that was something that we have talked about, and we ourselves made a choice on, no. The 30 years that Elisa and I are about to celebrate in a couple of months, the last 18, 19 years of that have been extraordinary. Don't get me wrong, there have been moments where it's not. And yet we can look back and go, those were some good years. And so I think this is really interesting to say, and even for myself to hear sometimes, because I can get a little dogmatic on the intimacy lifestyle. It's like, we only had sex once this week and we were talking about having it twice. And yet that one time was absolutely amazing. And so that closeness and connection and the way we were able to have and be sexually intimate is probably better than us having sex 2 or 3 times that week, with one being great and 2 lackluster.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that's just, it makes me even take a pause and go, okay, well that was good. Maybe next week we can have 2 amazing times.
And sometimes there are 3 and you go with that. And I just want to hit on, kind of looking at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, like some of those significant stages, because you don't live the same. Like Tony and I have been together. We met 3 weeks before I turned 20. I am now 52. Okay. We're about to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. Who we were as 20 somethings and newlyweds, a little bit different in our 30s, 40s, 50s. And I have no idea what the 60s are going to bring. But it's something to think about, right? Because in your 20s.
Pray that it's amazing.
Well, I think it still will be. But, there's fewer responsibilities, fewer physical limitations, right? But you could already be in this place, and we get the emails where there's mismatched desire that is happening. There can be infertility issues in your 20s, painful intercourse.
Yeah.
In your 30s, a lot of people, in their 20s and 30s are starting to raise children, and the careers are, growing, and you're trying to find enough energy because those beautiful blessings that we call children don't sleep when they're little, and sometimes when they're older. And
Or in those 30s, because I'm hanging out with a lot of guys in the fitness center and
yeah.
stuff, you got sports.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy for me to hear that, because I remember when we were in our 30s and I looking back and we were talking about Pop Warner football, or I
Oh
was
my
talking about
gosh.
Pop Warner football, and just thinking about like all day Saturday, we would drive somewhere, we'd sit in the heat, we'd watch our son play, we would, have a lunch or something afterwards with the team or him, or coming home, and then church on Sunday, and then we'd have a full week. And I'm
Right.
thinking, holy mackerel, I remember those moments. And that was just saying Saturday. That's not talking about the practices in school and this
All
and
the
that.
rhythms,
And,
yeah. Well, and then you get into your 40s and 50s, and you've got hormonal changes that are happening. You've got aging parents. You've got your own health concerns. You've got, just these rhythms that affect. Whoa, what is that face for?
oh, well, you said health concerns, and we did an episode a while
I
back
was gonna say, you just gave me a look.
about health.
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to
Would
mention
you
it,
like
and
to
I
say
haven't.
something?
Yeah, and you brought it up, so I just wanted to bring that up, because yes, medical issues, concerns that can pretty much put us stop us in our tracks. I did go see a urologist, gosh, after that episode, and I can't remember for the life of me what number it was or the title of it, but I did go, got fully checked out. My doctor was awesome. He was actually laughing. He's like, "Why are you in here? You're a young guy." And I told him what was going on. The outcome is I have an enlarged prostate. He's not concerned. Just need to be checking it every 6 months. So I just wanted to say we practice what we preach. And I think that episode for me was me preaching to myself a little bit about, hey, Tony, you can't just talk about this and don't do anything about it. You're going to have to be intentional. You're going to have to take action. And so I just want everyone
Good
to know
job,
that I did
Tony.
it.
Good job. As we're talking about ages and stages, and I do appreciate Tony just sharing with you guys that he did go, and we're all good. And good. What a great doctor that's like, what are you doing here? You're too young to be in here. Like, boost the ego to absolutely start. But
Yes.
as we talked about 40s and 50s, and then in your 60s and beyond, right? You're dealing with changing bodies and health conditions and energy levels and shifts in sexual intimacy. Now, I'm just going to put a pin in that, because we have couples in the one family who are in their 60s and 70s and probably beyond having great sexual intimacy. So that's why I don't believe all of the statistics, because the one family looks a little different.
And again, if we start from the top of the episode, average. That we're just looking at averages, and we're just helping you, because again, this is a question that gets asked of us, and we felt like we need to answer it in a way that everybody can hear it and go, okay, where are we and why are we here?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing, statistics give you context, but for a lot of couples, they also create pressure, right? Because if you're like, oh, well, the average couple in my age range is having sex once a week, but we're having sex twice a month, like, is there something wrong with us? Right? Or do you start going into this like whole negative, head space, and you're stuck. And then you can get into a place where statistics get weaponized, where the higher desire spouse might be like, well, other couples are having it more than we are. Like, what's going on? And the lower desire spouse is hearing, well, I'm not good enough as a spouse. And so now all of a sudden we're in this like back and forth, and we're not trying to understand one another. It's about who's right and proving the statistic, and, getting into this place where the comparison actually starts to impact your sexual intimacy and does more harm than good. It's not about how often the two of you are having sex, but how do we each feel about the sexual connection, the sexual intimacy that we have, and it's looking at what are those emotions behind it. Is there simmering resentment, or, feelings of loneliness and pressure, being rejected? Well, that needs to be addressed, right? And you also need to look at, like, on the positive side, like, are we good? Are we both good with where we're at? Because here's the thing, again, statistics, that's a number that is all about a whole bunch of people putting in their information, but it doesn't speak to who are we as a couple and what works for us and what may be impacting us. Like, hormonal changes or side effects from medication or stress levels, or we've been disconnected or we've got young babies, right? It's looking at this and going, hey, something's going on in this pillar. And I will tell you as a coach, and I hear this from, the certified coaches all the time, the 6 pillars of intimacy certified coaches, is that when there's a crack in the sexual intimacy pillar, it doesn't just stay there in sexual intimacy, right? If you guys are feeling disconnected, if this is a challenge for you, you may start to see that there are situations also happening in your emotional intimacy, the conversations you're having, or your physical intimacy, the touch. And it's getting into this place of understanding that we might be having conversations around frequency, but how we're both, interpreting that or what our perspectives are might be different. And being able to have conversations around that, being able to understand, hey, what season are we in and how do we have a productive conversation? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about after this break. We're back and we're discussing ways to understand the season you're in and be able to have a productive conversation around those expectations. Because I know as a coach, you can have a lot of conversations around expectations, but they're not always productive.
No.
Tony's probably thinking about the last conversation we had or a recent conversation, the way you're rolling your eyes over there. But it's true. Couples can get into this place, especially around a topic like sexual frequency. And it can easily disintegrate into well, I want this and you're not giving me that. And it's this tug of war. And well, I saw an article or this. Instead, it's coming back and going, hold up. What season of life are we in? What's going on in our world?
You know what? When you say that, identify your season, I think, and it's really interesting, the average for the 30s is higher than the 40s and 50s. I feel like the 30s should even be lower. I know you're younger, but there is so much that is dependent upon you guys at times that it feels like that season would slow down a little bit more. And then when you get to a point where children are starting to leave the house or they're aging, like they can drive and they can drive their siblings, you two now have actual more time together. It was just.
But what's interesting about that, even hearing you say it, that's often when a lot of women are experiencing a lot of hormonal changes. So and so you have all of these, but that's what invites the conversation.
Sure.
Right? What season are we in?
Yeah, and again, you have to do it. You have to identify that season to know, like, this is where we are.
Right. Right. When was the last time that our sexual frequencies felt good to us? Like, what's been going on in our lives? Has there been a change in our health? And I'm telling you, if there's even the remote possibility, we were just having this conversation. I was with a couple girlfriends last night and we're talking about, one of the gals was talking about how she was getting her nails done, and the nail tech was talking about some of the perimenopause symptoms, early 40s. And my friend was like, hey, you should get your hormones checked. And she's like, I'm too young. My girlfriend just looked at her and she goes, I would still get your hormones checked. Because we've become so well versed in perimenopause that you start hearing these things and you're like, get your hormones checked.
Yeah.
Right. But maybe it's stuff going on with the kids, whatever it could be, but it's stepping into a conversation that isn't just about like, how much sex are we having? It's about, hey, let's just talk about what's going on in our lives and how that's impacting not just our sexual intimacy, but the connection in our marriage.
Well, again, I bring it up. I would rather us have one amazing sexual intimacy interaction a week,
okay,
than 2 lackluster ones. Personally, I'll take the 2 lackluster ones. Don't get me wrong.
I was like,
don't get. let me just say that. I'm going to take the 2
I'm sure you all saw my face where it was like, wait a minute, what is Tony really saying?
I will take the 2 lackluster ones.
Okay.
Believe me.
Okay. If
that's what I get.
Just keep talking. I'm curious as to how deep this hole is going to go. But go ahead.
I'm just saying, I would rather have one amazing time together where the satisfaction is mutual.
Yeah.
And I find that to be less likely more times than not. I would say we have like 2 of those maybe a month, and the rest of the times they're good, don't get me wrong, and yet I feel like I'm not I would like to please you more, and you're okay not. And so that's where I'm just saying frequency is an interesting
Yeah.
discussion. And again, it's about that satisfaction side. If I look at the satisfaction side of things, I really like when we talk about sexual intimacy, romance, initiating, foreplay, and sexual intercourse. I would love to have more of that time of initiating foreplay, right? And then that leads up to our sexual intercourse time instead of a quickie or a semi quickie. I would say a semi quickie. It's not. We never really have quickies anymore, but we have a semi quickie. There's a little warm up foreplay. Grab some Uber lube, and we're going on our way instead of lingering in the fun of what's the word I'm looking for? Pleasuring one another.
I was like, this feels like we're playing charades, and
I
I'm like,
know.
I don't know what it sounds like or how many syllables. But you know, that conversation that you just saw between Tony and I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, right? How to move those conversations around sexual expectations. And it's having those conversations outside of the bedroom. You've heard us say this for years on the One Extraordinary Marriage show. Get out of your bedroom to talk about your sex life. Find a neutral time. So please do not start this conversation at 9 p.m. Or whatever is a very fatigued time for the two of you, because
Can I say something too?
Yeah,
Also,
I will let you say something. What if I said no?
well, then I would say
I'm going to say it anyway.
I want to say it anyways.
Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
I do believe some of these conversations, and we've had them too, where I'm driving and you're at home and we're having the conversation on the phone.
Sure.
I do believe that we have done a disservice over the years of saying you have to be together and you have to, like, I think it's helpful. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Because seeing body language, facial expressions are helpful. But I also think sometimes to break the ice, if we need to, having that ability to just be like, I'm driving and it's like, hey, this is a question I have. I'm not saying I'm going to do it all the time.
Sure.
And yet, would that be helpful to someone, to a couple, to be like, man, this is a tough question. Like, I don't know if I could bring it up. And yet, if you're rolling down the road and you're listening to this, pick up the phone, call your spouse, and just be like, hey. And as long as they have time and you know,
the coach in me was like, hey, you've got to ask if it's a good time to talk.
yeah, you got to ask if there's a good time to talk. You don't want to just interrupt and just be like, hey, we need to talk right now. And they're making dinner or they're doing something outside. They're on the mower, you know what I mean? And it's 95 degrees and they're sweating and all that. But I do sometimes think there is an ability to have the walls come down because we're having this conversation in a way that doesn't feel attacking, or we feel like, man, we have to have an answer right now. It just feels like it flows. And we have had many conversations on the phone around our sexual intimacy that has allowed us to have the satisfaction and the enjoyment we want.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure. As a coach, by all means.
The coach in me is also like,
hey, Elisa as a coach is going, Tony,
the other thing is,
tap the brakes.
No. I actually think this is incredibly valuable. And part of it is just a little bit about our story. When Tony and I were first dating, we were together in Colorado for 8 weeks. And then we were long distance for a school year. And so we really built our relationship on phone conversations.
Sure.
This was the mid 90s. So yes, it was phone conversations. We couldn't, no FaceTime, whatever. But with that, you get into this place where now my concern is don't make these text messages going back and forth, like actual phone calls. Like we're listening and it's give and take and that type of thing, where you can ask the questions like, how do you feel about our sexual connection? Right? Like what is going well? What do you miss? What helps you feel desired? Or maybe there's some things that make sexual intimacy difficult in the season. And it's not about like, well, we still need to be hitting this number, or you know what, we're not doing this. It's like, let me take all of that information in and then start going into a place of what's the direction that we're going to go. Not trying to hit some magic number.
Right.
Because again, you're not a statistic. You can look at all the statistics, but you and your spouse are not statistics. You are a married couple looking to create your own extraordinary marriage, specifically as we talk today around your sexual intimacy pillar. So what's the direction that the two of you are going to go arm in arm, side by side, just like I was sharing with a couple I'm doing premarital with last night, on the same team, and saying, hey, this is what we're going to look at. Maybe we are going to schedule sex for the season we're in, or we're going to really be in this place of spending more time together in foreplay and initiating. Or maybe it is like Tony with, going to the urologist and there's a medical concern that needs to be addressed. And you're like, that's the direction we're going to go. Or maybe it's simply, hey, we're going to start having conversations about our sexual intimacy. We're just going to baby step it and go, what's one topic that we want to talk about? But getting into this place of, from the very beginning of this episode, we've been saying it. It's not about the statistics. They're all in context. You and your spouse are a very unique relationship. And at the end of the day, it is what works for the two of you.
Yeah. As you go off and think about this episode and the frequency of your sexual intimacy, just take a moment. Think about it. Where are you in the season? And then what does it look like for you and your spouse in this season? Because I know for myself and for Elisa, as we look at our own marriage, we're not looking at others anymore. We're not. We're looking at ourselves and we're trying to go, where are we now? We're not where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Where are we now? And how do we make it the most enjoyable? How do we make it extraordinary for us? And I shared right now, what I see it as. Personally, we've been living out the intimacy lifestyle 2 times a week. Honestly, if we had that one time that was just amazing every single week, I'd be satisfied right now. And that's something we haven't talked about, but we're able
News to me.
to talk about that and share, and we'll have more conversations around it. And what does that look like? And so as you go off this week, think about it, have the discussion. You got to have these discussions, break the expectations, interact with your spouse, and create that extraordinary marriage. You guys have yourselves a fantastic week. We'll catch you next week. Love you guys.